You guys got each read a statement.
Yes.
Governor, how you doing?
Good afternoon, everybody. You didn't come here to hear from me, so I'm going to be very brief. I wanted to just say a couple of remarks about our legislative colleagues, as well as, importantly, the group that's gathered here today, faith leaders, activists, folks who are living the realities in our state every single day in terms of the digging out that we all need to do from the war on drugs and other of our societal challenges. First of all, I want to give a shout out to the legislative leadership. We are working together seamlessly to try to get across the goal line on Monday in both chambers, and I want to thank Senate President Steve Sweeney, who is out of state but would want to be here. Richard Smith's going to read a note from him in a minute. Speaker Craig Coughlin, who has a family commitment, also wanted to be here. Assemblywoman Annette Keano was going to speak for him as well. But beyond that, the leadership in the Senate, Senator Nick Scuteri and Senator Sandra Cunningham, Assembly members, in addition to Annette, Jamel Holly, Brittany Timberlake, Angela McKnight, and Benji Wimberly in particular, I want to give a shout out. You have heard me say this over the past number of years. I did not get to the notion of legalizing adult use marijuana easily with 4 kids. It was not something that I sort of woke up and said, you know what, this is where I want to go. But I got there because of social injustice. And I'm here today for that reason, as we all are up here today for that reason. We have the widest white, non-white gap of persons incarcerated in America, and far and away the biggest contributor are low-end drug offenses. The status quo was unacceptable. The amount of persons incarcerated and with records as it relates to these low-end drug crimes are in the 6-digit numbers. Almost 200,000 people would be impacted by what we may be able to do on Monday. Our kids are exposed with no regulation. The bad guys run the business and make the money. And again, the social injustices are not cured. That's the status quo. We're not inventing marijuana. Marijuana exists. Our kids are exposed. The bad guys run the business. And we have the widest white, non-white gap of persons incarcerated in America. So if we don't get done on Monday, that's what we'll default to on Tuesday. We have the opportunity to do something that no state in the history of our republic has ever done, either associated with legalization of adult use marijuana or in any other association. The expungements, both real and virtual, associated with what we're trying to do on Monday is historic and unprecedented. The opportunity to vacate sentences for those who are incarcerated or on parole is unprecedented. The impact zones that will be set up for the new licenses, the goals for both minority as well as women and disabled veterans to get licenses, the opportunity for conditional licenses, which will disproportionately again impact small, more often than not diverse applicants. That whole package has never been done before in the history of the United States. If we could get the votes on Monday, we will set a standard that has never been achieved before. We are close. We're not there yet. We're making progress, but we have a ways to go. And it is in that spirit, again, to the social justice cause for which we all stand, with the opportunity to do something extraordinary and historic. I don't compare what we're trying to do to the perfect. As I've said to many, let's not let perfect be the enemy of the good. The question is, what are we trying to do, which is pretty darn good, historic, never been done before in the history of our country, compared to the status quo that will exist if, in fact, we don't achieve this. With that, I'd love to bring up a series of leaders. First, an outstanding assemblywoman, one of the leaders in this whole cause, to speak for herself as well as on behalf of Speaker Craig Coughlin, Assemblywoman Annette Quijano. Annette, please.
Good afternoon. First, I'm going to read a statement from Speaker Craig Coughlin, and then I'll end with my remarks. The status quo has been disproportionately unfair to our minority communities. This bill is a step in the right direction to correct that inequality. This will help to create a pathway to economic growth for all communities while addressing social justice concerns. We would create an easier path to expungements for those who were charged with a minor cannabis possession crime prior to the law. There have been far too many people, especially those from Black and Hispanic communities, who have been negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. The inequalities in the enforcement of cannabis laws are not acceptable. There are long-term impacts on the lives of all people in this state, but significantly those of color. It is time we listen to the will of the majority of New Jerseyans and take a common sense approach to regulation of cannabis. This bill represents that approach. I'll start my statement now. Back in June, the Assembly Judiciary Committee, which I chaired, held a hearing on the expungement process in New Jersey. I have also met independently with groups of citizens, law enforcement, and the courts. All agree that the expungement process is cumbersome and often expensive. The process can and should be streamlined. Next Monday, the General Assembly will consider my legislation to legalize adult use cannabis and provide for the expedited expungement of criminal records associated with marijuana. So much time and effort and thought has gone into this bill, and I'd like to thank all the legislators, especially those that couldn't make it today, staff and advocates who have brought us to this point. One of the biggest issues is that the records can be spread across multiple court systems and police departments. Just finding criminal records requires combing through separate computer databases dating back decades, and in some older cases, digging through dusty index cards. This is why we worked with the judiciary, who are being asked through my legislation to develop an e-filing system whereby petitioners can enter their information online at no cost and have the courts work to track down those relevant records. The onus of this task is currently on the petitioners. This new method will be made available for all types of expungements, not just marijuana charges, thus making it a broader reform. We use the term expedited expungements because petitioners will not have to wait the years that are required under current law. A petitioner will be able to seek an expungement for possession and distribution charges up to £5 when this bill takes effect. Just because a record is expunged does not mean that the collateral effects of it simply go away. This is why the bill includes virtual expungements, which basically say that marijuana charges cannot be considered, for example, when applying for a job or financial aid or housing. I'm also working on a bill that will stiffen penalties for those in the business of making law enforcement and court records available, even when those records are expunged. Together, expedited and virtual expungements can open new opportunities and restore someone's hope for the future. Just 4 days from now, people whose lives are being held back by marijuana charges will have their best hope for a better life decided by the legislature. Thank you.
Thanks, Annette. Well said. Thank you, Annette, both for your words and for the speaker's words as well. One of the things I've said to many folks over the past number of days, if we have success on Monday, it's not the end of history. Expungement is a good example of this. We're going to come to work Tuesday morning. I've already spoken with our Chief Innovation Officer to try to figure out a way to glean from what California and other states are doing to try to inch our way towards something that looks a lot more automatic, given how cumbersome the reality of this is. And the virtual expungement is a big element of this in the meantime. It's now my honor to ask to bring up a former NAACP colleague, the president of the NAACP in the great state of New Jersey, a member of its national board, to speak on behalf of both Senate President Steve Sweeney as well as on his own. Richard Smith, please. Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Governor. I have been asked to bring greetings on behalf of Senate President Steve Sweeney, who is out of state, and we are appreciative of his leadership and the help that he's provided to the civil rights community to helping us to move our agenda forward. Here's his statement. We are approaching a floor vote on reform legislation following years of hard work and commitment by advocates and elected officials. It is a cause that we have all embraced, the reform of marijuana laws that have had a discriminatory impact on minorities. They have suffered the most from the drug laws and the disparities in how those laws have been implemented. The so-called war on drugs has had an unfair impact on the lives of minorities and on communities of diversity. It has been a failed policy that we now have the opportunity to change. Social justice has always been the driving force in my pursuit of marijuana legalization, and fairness and equal opportunities are my principal goals in bills we have put forward in the legislature. It is a thoughtful and well-crafted plan that will advance important social justice reforms, begin to reverse the discriminatory impact drug laws have had on minorities, and offer economic opportunities to the individuals and communities who have experienced injustice for generations. This is the continuation of our efforts to bring broader reforms to the criminal justice system in New Jersey. It is why I have fought for a law requiring independent prosecutors in cases of police-involved fatalities, and why I worked to reform the bail system that eliminated what was really a system of debtor's prison. It was a system that kept people in jail, often for long periods of time and for minor offenses, simply because they could not afford bail. It was a system that we reformed. It is a reform that we all should be proud of. But there is more to do. The justice reforms in the cannabis legislation and in the expungement bill authored by Senators Sandra Cunningham and Teresa Ruiz offer opportunities to make further strides. They will advance social justice, legal justice, and economic justice in meaningful ways. This is an opportunity for continued progress as we strive for a society that respects the rights of everyone. Senator Steve Sweeney. My statement from the NAACP. Close to 6 years ago, I requested that the NAACP New Jersey State Conference grant us permission to allow the NAACP to become a part of the task force known as the New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform, a partnership of public safety, medical, civil rights, faith, political, and criminal justice reform organizations and individuals committed to changing the New Jersey's laws to legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana like alcohol for adults. I indicated that on an issue this important, we most definitely needed to have a seat at the table. I believe that when you don't have a seat at the table, more often than not, you're on the menu. So we must be the moral conscience of this movement, the watchdog. African Americans are disproportionately affected by the criminalization of marijuana, which makes passing the law a civil rights issue. Justice is the quality of being just and fair, and these laws have neither been just nor fair. Here in New Jersey, the problem is clear. New Jersey makes more than 32,000 marijuana arrests per year, and black New Jerseyans are nearly 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession. These numbers alone make legalization a civil rights issue. We're usually conservative in terms of the issues that we support, but disproportionate prosecution of African Americans for drug-related offenses for marijuana called us to this fight for legalization in our community. If the laws on drug possession were being enforced correctly, then the number of arrests, prosecutions, and prison sentences would be proportionate to our society across the board. Sadly, That's just not the picture. Let's be clear. The NAACP is not encouraging marijuana use. Let's not get it confused. But our current system gives too much access to marijuana to young people. We need to move marijuana and marijuana dealers off the corners and put it behind the counter where it can be regulated, and that can be done on Monday. We, like you, have heard those who have opposed this legislation, and we respect their opinion. One of the talking points has been that marijuana is a gateway drug. A gateway drug. And we agree. It's a gateway to county jail or state prison if you are black or brown. This is a good bill, but not perfect. None are. The NAACP will continue to keep a watchful eye on the resources, working with the governor and the legislators through the budget process to ensure that we will be given even more substantive reinvestment in those communities that have been devastated by this failed system. As I said, this bill is not perfect, yet transformational. We indicated at the onset that for us to support any piece of legislation, it must include racial and social justice provisions at the beginning, and it did not. But because of our advocacy, it does now. In short, it includes provisions such as expanded and expedited expungement, virtual expungement, dismisses pending marijuana charges, resentencing provisions, civil, not criminal penalties for youth, and minority inclusion in this new industry. We said at the onset that we would not allow black people to be used as the poster child in regards to why marijuana should be legalized and then be the forgotten entity after it's signed. We are not. So S4703A4497 is transformational. It will change the trajectory of thousands of lives of those who were victims of this racist, failed war on drugs. We urge this legislature to vote yes and put this bill on the governor's desk and allow him the opportunity to continue to be a trailblazer for civil rights and social justice and end this racist failed war on drugs in New Jersey once and for all. Thank you for your time.
Richard, well done, buddy. Thank you, Richard, very much. I want to also acknowledge, I see him over in the back there, Assemblyman Joe Danielson, who's a friend, a supporter, a guy with whom I spoke about this as early on as any. And in particular, there's medical marijuana at stake here as well and its expansion. And Joe, I want to thank you for your leadership and all the above. Urban communities are disproportionately impacted and have been by the war on drugs, none more so than this community. It's my honor to bring up its mayor and friend, Mayor Reed Gociora. Reed? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Governor. As a former assemblyman and a former municipal prosecutor and now the mayor of the city of Trenton, I wholeheartedly endorse the governor's initiative. I think this is the right way to go. Social justice and economic development go hand in hand. There's too many. I walk in the streets and talk to many constituents that talk about a prior record and how it's a hindrance for them to get ahead, get a job, which will result in economic development for this city. So we need the legislature to pass this. This will be a good thing for the city of Trenton, both on the economic front where we can build jobs, they can take part in cultivation and processing and in dispensary, but also be able to wipe clean a record that's a hindrance for them to get ahead. And we want to move this city forward. We congratulate the governor on this initiative, and we hope to see its fruition in the legislature in the days to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. You know, one of the things Reed mentioned was the economic development opportunity, and that's jobs. If you look at other states that have done this, these are real jobs. Another point that I want to make sure I make is that some of the proceeds from the state tax, the excise tax, will not only go to fund the expungement program, but also go toward job training. And we need that desperately in the state. Another point, unlike any other state in America that's done this, there are provisions that would allow local communities like Trenton to charge, layer on levels of taxes depending on what element of the food chain in this industry they want to participate and make meaningful revenues locally. So Reed, for all the above, I say thank you. My honor now to introduce the immediate past president of the Hispanic Bar and a leader in this fight, Arlene Quinones Perez.
As a former president of the Hispanic Bar Association, I am frustrated seeing Hispanics and African Americans arrested at a disproportionate rate for merely possessing marijuana, a drug whose medical capabilities remain untapped. Legalizing marijuana, if it's done in a controlled, regulated way with caps on growers and dispensaries, will protect the public and the patients. Legalizing marijuana in a controlled manner is the right thing to do for social justice, but also the right thing to do for our economy and the right thing to do for public safety. As an attorney that specializes in labor and employment, I can't tell you how often this issue comes across my desk, and it's unfortunate because it truly is such a disproportionate rate of black and brown that are affected. That needs to be addressed, and this legislation does that. So hopefully on Monday this does get passed, because the longer that it stays not passed is the longer that we go away in handcuffs, and it's just not fair. I applaud the governor and the legislature for this compromise and for the long road that we've been on that hopefully comes to an end very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Well said. Well said, and thank you for your leadership. I've looked at some of the statistics. I'm sure he's going to share them with you, but the amount of money that we spend in our state adjudicating marijuana offenses is jaw-dropping. And that information comes from the ACLU, and it's my honor to bring up its head in New Jersey, Amol Sinha.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Governor Murphy, for your inspired leadership. As the governor mentioned, a couple of years ago, the ACLU of New Jersey put together a report that shared some pretty shocking, yet not surprising statistics. The reality is that black New Jerseyans are 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than their white neighbors. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars every year on prosecuting and policing and adjudicating marijuana arrests. This is a bill that will help us save lives and money, and it's incredibly important that we do both. No state has leaned into social justice through marijuana legalization as wholeheartedly as New Jersey is poised to. This bill sets a baseline for what it looks like to meaningfully acknowledge the human wreckage of the war on drugs and to make good faith efforts to reverse the damage done. This legislation creates an expedited expungement process, guarantees non-discrimination based on cannabis convictions, allows people with criminal records to participate in the industry, which is incredibly important, emphasizes industry diversity, and requires at least one social justice representative, but not only one, at least one social justice representative to sit on the board of the Regulatory Commission. Now, we know that no legislation can accomplish all things, and there's certainly some room for improvement in this bill. But this bill is the first that we've seen that can meaningfully begin to address the devastation of the drug war, especially on communities of color. Strong social justice and civil rights legislation simultaneously looks backwards and forwards. It attempts to undo the injustices of the past while helping ensure a more just and equitable society going forward. And to be sure, this bill is a social justice bill. By expediting expungements, creating opportunities for directly impacted people, and creating a diverse industry, this bill is that strong social justice bill that we need right now. This is a historic moment, not just because marijuana could be legal in the most densely populated and one of the most diverse states in the country. It's a historic moment because, guided by social justice advocates, our state has relied on the tenets of racial justice and equity to guide our path to legalization. And I strongly urge the ACLU, both at the state level and national level, strongly urge the Senate and the Assembly to pass this legislation, because we could really stand out as a nationwide leader on marijuana legalization. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you very much, Amol, for your leadership on this and so much else. I spoke with her yesterday on the phone. She immediately swung into action. I asked her if she could read this, get comfortable with it, and put out a statement of support if she felt the organization could, and she did, and they did. It's my honor to bring up Burlington County's own, representing the Black Issues Convention, its leader, Reva Foster.
I guess I feel like saying ditto, ditto, ditto. But New Jersey Black Issues, as the chair, we fully support the legislation of adult use marijuana because of the transitional impact that it's going to have in our community with the social justice and civil rights people. And those people happen to look like me and happen to be people of color that are subjected to this. We are overwhelmed with this prospect of having this particular bill approved on Monday. We have not seen this kind of leadership from a governor and a legislator in the history of New Jersey. So we're happy to see it today. Finally, this is, and don't let you forget, this is truly a civil rights and a criminal justice reform bill that helps people of color in the community that need it the most. We can't wait any longer. We need to do the right thing. Let all of us be the ones that can say our legacy was that we did the right things for those of color. Thank you.
Thank you, Reva. Great job. Thank you, Reva, for your leadership on this, as I mentioned, on so many others here today, on so many matters. Would love to hear from a couple of faith leaders. First one I'd love to bring up is a dear friend, a leader not just as in his faith community at New Hope Memorial Baptist in Elizabeth, but as a leader in the National Action Network working with Reverend Al Sharpton, and a guy who has just been there consistently on the right side of history for the right causes for so long. Please welcome Reverend Pastor Steffi Bartley.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you all for being here today. Again, my name is Pastor Steffi Bartley. I'm the coordinator for the National Action Network under the leadership of Reverend Al Sharpton. I'm here wearing two hats. The first hat is to agree with Reva and others, President Richard Smith, and those that have talked about this being a civil rights issue. The other hat that I wear is an ex-con, where I myself was arrested for selling or possessing marijuana. And I just wish Governor Murphy would have been here some years ago so that I could have asked for that expungement, and I don't need one. Not looking for any job anywhere. But this is so vitally important to our community. As I pastor over 1,000 members, to be able to talk with parents, family members, who are constantly coming to me saying, Pastor, what can you do? How can you help? My son is trying to get on with his life. He made a mistake. He now cannot get an apartment. Every time he goes to fill out a job application, he waits until the background check is done. And then after the background check is done, they decline to hire him simply because he made a mistake. I want to speak directly to those that might be on the fence. I don't know if you've ever been arrested for the use or for possessing marijuana. I don't know if you have someone in your family that has done such a crime as that. But I'm petitioning you, please get on the right side, that we can make an impact in the state of New Jersey so that we can make history, so that our young men, our young women can get on with their lives. It all depends on that vote Monday. And so I'm saying, please, we need your help. This governor is working hard, along with the persons that you see behind him, legislatures and others, trying to make a difference. And so Monday, we need you to vote that this bill is passed so that we can share with our family members that you can begin to live again. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, man. Boy, it's a hard act to follow. Thank you, Reverend Bartley, for that extraordinary statement. Another great faith leader, this time from this community, the great capital city, from Friendship Baptist. Please help me welcome Reverend John Taylor. Reverend?
Good evening, everyone. we've been waiting for quite some time for a governor to have such a vision, be willing to step out. And that's the young people on the street say, oftentimes we hear a whole lot of talk, but it's good to have a governor that's willing to put some skin in the game, that he's willing to stand up and come forward, not only just to help black and brown, but to help the communities as a whole. Because please remember, although we make up about 37% of the population, and then we make up over now 70% of those that are incarcerated, marijuana affects a lot of people, not just black and brown. But we are ecstatic, we are elated that he's willing to take this stand to help our people so we can spend more time educating our young people, young men and women, and not incarcerating them, and we can stop this cradle to the cell mentality. And so with that, we will press, and we're hoping that everyone that is involved on Monday do the right thing. If you have heard, is civil rights. We need civil rights, equal rights, and economical rights. And there's a lot of economical power that's based upon this, and we want to make sure that that economical power is shared within the black and brown community. So God bless you, and once again, Governor, we thank you and salute you for being willing to step out front and keep your campaign promises. What a governor that's on the cutting edge, and we thank you and we support you. God bless the citizens and residents of New Jersey.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Pastor. And thank you again for your leadership, both in the faith community, but as Reed knows, in the broader Trenton community, well outside of your sanctuary. I'd love to ask, one of my very first appointments was to reconstitute the Criminal Sentencing Commission that had laid dormant, I believe, for the entire 8 years before I was elected. And I got the chance to make 2 appointments, both distinguished, but one of them is with us today. And I'd love to ask Giles Shipp to come up and say a couple of words. Giles represents and is the leader of Noble, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement. Giles, come on up.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. We in law enforcement know, as law enforcement leaders, that this is not a problem that you can arrest your way out of. We not only know that now, we've known that for years. And again, I thank the Governor for his forward thinking on this issue, because this is the way the system works. A person is arrested, they're incarcerated, and unfortunately, under the laws we have in place now, they're pretty much blackballed for life. They don't get a second opportunity or a second chance. And this legislation will give them that second opportunity to become a productive member of society. And law enforcement leaders from around this nation, not only police officers, but attorneys generals, district attorneys, and others, sheriffs, and all in the system, we know that, again, this is not a problem that we can arrest our way out of. We have to be more assertive with respect to dealing with these issues. We have to work more on the prevention side. And so, Governor, I just want to, again, thank you for your leadership on this issue.
Thank you very much, Giles. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, sir. And having the law enforcement perspective matters on this. Again, it takes a village, all sorts of different organizations and individuals and legislators and leadership. And it's my honor to call up for a few words a powerful voice in this discussion from the Drug Policy Alliance, Roseanne Scotty. Roseanne, come on down. Great to have you.
A little while ago, a young woman called our office. She was distraught. She was in college. She was going to graduate this year and was looking for a job, applying for jobs, looking to her future. She had just gotten arrested on a marijuana offense, and all that she had worked for years and all her future plans were being disrailed. In tears, she asked if there was anything that we could do, any direction we could give her. All I could say to her was to talk to her attorney about the best possible defense and let her know that advocates across the state and elected officials across the state were working on legislation so that the day would come when no one would find themselves in her position. Monday can be that day. This young woman is not alone. More than 32,000 people are arrested every year in the state of New Jersey for marijuana possession alone. This derails their lives and imperils their futures. These individuals are our families, our friends, and our neighbors. If this legislation passes on Monday, these unjust arrests will be a thing of the past. Thousands of people right now as we stand here today have a trial date hanging over their head for a marijuana offense. They are scared, they are desperate, and they don't know what impact this will have on their lives and just how bad it's going to be. If this legislation passes, those pending charges will be dismissed with a stroke of the pen. Tens of thousands of people in our state have the scarlet letter of a past marijuana conviction. It prevents them from getting jobs, from getting housing, from getting student loans. If this legislation passes, these individuals can get expedited and cost-free expungement of those offenses and begin to rebuild their lives. And as everyone in this room knows, the majority of people who have been impacted negatively by these arrests and these convictions have been people of color. It is long past time that that wrong was righted. This legislation is not perfect. No piece of legislation is, but advocates across this state, leadership in the Assembly and in the Senate, the sponsors of this bill, and the governor have worked tirelessly to come as close to an ideal as we can get. There's few pieces of legislation that would help so many people and change so many people's lives. The day has come to make it a reality that no one else will suffer from these arrests, from these convictions, and from the destruction it wreaks on people's lives. Monday will be that day, and we will be there to see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. So well said. So well said. Thank you for your leadership. One of my favorite people in New Jersey, there are many favorites up here, I have to say, but the guy who's been driving People's Organization for Progress, or POP as we know it, for a long time is with us, and I'd love to ask him to come up and say a few words. A leader in the fight for decades, not just on this, but in so many other, pushing back at so many other social injustices. Larry Ham is in the house. Larry?
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to thank Governor Murphy for his leadership on this issue. I want to thank the governor and the legislators that have crafted this historic bill, which we hope will become law on Monday. No social change is brought about smoothly. It all comes through a very difficult process. And likewise with this issue of marijuana legalization. 2 decades ago, the People's Organization for Progress took the position that marijuana should be, first we said decriminalized, and then we said legalized. People said, this is impossible. It will never happen. And we were ridiculed roundly for it and continued for years to bear that burden. But now, on Monday, the impossible may become possible. And it depends in large part on our legislators. This moment is pregnant with possibilities. The question is, will the birth be stillborn, or will in fact it take us one more step down the road for social, racial, and economic justice? I urge the legislature of New Jersey, I urge particularly those legislators that are not on board yet, to really search their souls, to look at the history of social change in the state and in the nation, and come to understand that yes, there are some problems, there are some difficulties, but we can continue to work on those after we pass this bill on Monday. So I urge with the utmost seriousness, I urge the legislature of New Jersey, the legislators, to all vote in favor and make this bill law on Monday. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Again, that's about as good as it gets, so thank you very much, Larry, for that and for all. There, as I mentioned at the outset, and as Reed had mentioned as it relates to his perspective through the Trenton lens, there's not only a lot of social justice steps being taken in things like expungement and vacating of sentences, but there's a lot of economic opportunity that can hopefully spread into the broader communities, particularly communities of color, women-owned firms, disabled veterans applying, small players, and no one sees that opportunity better than the leader of the African American Chamber of Commerce, our friend John Harmon. John, come on up.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here, and Governor, thank you for your leadership in the legislature for standing tall on this issue. This is one that we've kind of fought for a long time, and the foundation has been laid by all my colleagues about the significance of what's before us. For me, it's about acknowledgement, it's about accountability, it's about equity, it's about reciprocity. All those components weigh heavily on us today. Will we go forward or continue to vacillate? Will we lead or we just continue to have a conversation? As it relates to African Americans, I'm reminded of Dr. King when he talked about blacks having a double portion of all that is wrong in America. So when they talk about the sentencing and the disparity, the mass incarceration of my brothers and sisters, I think this is time to cash that check or make that check good. So I'm encouraged from what we've covered today. I'm encouraged about what's potentially will happen on Monday, but moreover, I'm encouraged about the potential equity and the prosperity that will transform many communities if we do this right. There are resources that are on the table that if they're appropriated, if everyone has an opportunity to participate in this enterprise, we can elevate more boats here in New Jersey. Being the most diverse state in America, this is the time to really leverage the diversity of this state to do something good and not do something to just have a conversation. Lastly, this could be just another emotional engagement or transformational moment for the state of New Jersey. I embrace the latter, and I hope you all will on Monday to move us forward. And again, Governor Murphy, thank you for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, buddy. Thank you, John, for your leadership. We're almost there. I showed the order of speakers to Lloyd, and I promised him we hadn't forgotten him. So it's my honor, another great leader and a great voice in this fight, my honor to bring up Lloyd Freeman, the immediate past president of the Garden State Bar. Lloyd, come on down.
Thank you, Governor Murphy. The Garden State Bar Association is New Jersey's oldest and largest organization of black attorneys and judges. As black lawyers, we are always acutely focused on issues of social justice and civil rights, and the social justice elements here cannot be lost. As it has been mentioned, people of color have been disproportionately affected by the war on drugs for decades. It has resulted in systemic racial and social justice inequities for black and brown people. So while we support legalization, we must also support decriminalization. The Garden State Bar Association will be here to provide access to legal services for affected individuals in an effort to ensure they are properly informed and properly represented. We are thrilled that this bill includes explicit language that offers expungements and vacating of sentences for those individuals who were affected by marijuana offenses. This will be monumental for communities of color. The Garden State Bar Association will be there to help all those individuals, but specifically black and brown people, to reap the benefit of vacated and reduced sentences and expungements of their criminal records. Governor Murphy and the legislature can look to us at the Garden State Bar as a firm partner in this regard. Ultimately, the Garden State Bar Association hopes to right those past wrongs in the criminal justice system and give black and brown people equal access to the economic rewards of this new industry. The governor has said many times before that legalization and regulation of marijuana in New Jersey is expected to be a game changer. We strongly agree, and we look forward to helping change the game for Black and brown individuals across the state. Thank you for having us, Governor Murphy, as a partner, and we look forward to working with you to truly make New Jersey stronger and fairer for everyone through this initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lloyd. Well done. Thank you. Worth the wait, Lloyd, I might add, so I apologize for that. We got one more voice to be heard, and then we'll take a couple of questions. And this is a guy, I spoke to him on the phone the other day. Again, a faith leader, but so much more. A friend, clearly, somebody who is an extraordinary leader, but an extraordinarily powerful and clarion voice, not just in this struggle, but in the broader struggles. And if you need to know anything about Reverend Charles Boyer, when you have an organization that he leads called Salvation and Social Justice, that's all you need to know. So it is my great honor to bring up as our last speaker, representing not just Bethel AME, but Salvation and Social Justice, Reverend Charles Boyer. Last but not least.
You know, as I was standing there and I heard Pastor Barkley give remarks, I said, you know, I was arrested multiple times over marijuana too. I'm starting to wonder what the governor is up to. And now I know marijuana is a gateway drug. It must be a gateway to ministry. Amen. But I certainly want to, I want to thank, I want to thank this governor. And the reason I want to thank this governor is because he said he was dedicated to social justice priorities in this bill. And he and his staff have really worked tirelessly to make it just that. Also want to thank the Speaker and his staff and the Senate President and his staff. A major priority for Salvation and Social Justice is the abolition of the drug war and mass incarceration. And history teaches us that cannabis prohibition was enacted to support bias policies like stop and frisk, racial profiling, deportation, and the legalized enslavement of Black and brown bodies. According to analysis released yesterday from Insider New Jersey, arrests for low-level possessions of cannabis in Passaic County alone from August 2017 to August 2018 exceeded 2,000. As a faith-rooted organization, we are committed to pursue a more just and compassionate New Jersey. Addiction is best handled through public health and education, not through criminal justice. New Jersey has the opportunity to literally set captives free from prison, probation, parole, and a life stigmatized and shackled by a criminal record. We are not naive to the major corporate interests foaming at the mouth to make profits. But ending wars, unfortunately, often makes strange bedfellows. America has never abolished anything or liberated anyone for purely righteous purpose. If that were the case, there would be no need for prophetic passion, advocacy, and speaking truth to power. Without our collective campaigns and the leadership from this governor, this would merely be an industry bill for young white males with no person of color getting free, expunged, or given access to the market. We will continue to fight for reparative justice and focus investment in the communities which have been targeted by historically racist laws. And although this bill still lacks robust and overt community reinvestment, It is another major step in dismantling and abolishing the war on black and brown people. Thousands will reap the benefit of vacated or reduced sentences and expunged records. By any sober assessment, all pun intended, this is real liberation and this is real transformation. Thank you, Governor.
I just said to Annette and Richard, I wonder how we figured out that Reverend Boyer would be the last speaker. Bring it home. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. We'll take a couple of questions, please.
Some of the people in the legislature who are most against this bill are people of color, and I wanted to know are the people who spoke today, are you making appeals to people like Senator Rice and Senator Turner and Senator Sumner? And, how are you making those cases? Because obviously you're talking today to them. Because they're coming at it from a point of view of seeing this as a racial issue too.
So I'll say something as a general matter, because one of the things I don't want to do, and I don't think any of us want to do, is start talking about specific names. Do you have this person? Do you not have this person? So, and someone said this, even the folks who oppose this, I've spoken to almost everybody. I'm starting to call people in Pennsylvania. I've run out of people to call in New Jersey. Overwhelmingly, there's a mutual respect. We may not see things the same way, but there's mutual respect. But I think, can I say on behalf of everybody here, no one is being bashful right now. Is that fair to say? That's right. People are weighing in heavily. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but I think that's the case, right? And that'll continue to be the case. You haven't asked the question. This is still going to be very close. We're not there yet. I think we're making progress. I believe that. I don't think we'd be here today if we didn't feel like we were making progress, not just in the substance of the bill, as Reverend Boyer had spoken to, that had come a long way, but also we're chopping through this, but we're not there yet. Please. Well, if it passes, I'm hoping to get a good night's sleep, as I know I speak for everybody here. It's a huge deal, but we'll get right at it. And I mentioned this earlier. It isn't perfect. So I look at and Annette was incredibly articulate about the file, the index cards that are in the file boxes, which is preventing us from automatic expungement. Paramel Garg is here with us from our team. He and our Chief Innovation Officer, I got on the phone the other night. What can we do to try to not necessarily get to complete automation, but what can we do to get that into a better place? That work will begin instantly. There's a 5-member commission that the Senate President, the Speaker, and I need to put in place. That will happen very quickly. The wheels will begin turning. If it doesn't, again, we will have missed an extraordinary opportunity, a historic, game-changing for hundreds of thousands of lives opportunity in this state. If it doesn't happen, and I'm an optimist, so I almost don't even want to talk about it. We have put off for now months and months and months the enormous demand for medical marijuana. The now 42,000 members of our residents who are in that program, up from, I think, mid-teens when I took office. We have resisted granting more licenses. That's a unilateral action that our Department of Health, I don't want to speak for the Department of Health, but that our administration can take. We'll have no other choice. And that will be a significant number. I'm not sure what that number looks like, but that'll be a big number. It won't be 6. It'll be many, many multiples of that. But I will do that with a very, very heavy heart. Please.
Will you continue to speak through the budget process if it doesn't pass Monday?
Of course, I speak through everything. I won't be happy. And let me just say this. I'm Irish. I'm a Murphy. I point and shoot and speak. We're locked in. This is not just me. The Senate President and I were on the phone yesterday going over names. The Speaker and I have been on a couple of times. I've been speaking. I spoke to Joe, asking his help on somebody earlier today. So we're all in this together. This is not just me. It's not just them. It's not just the advocates. This is a whole all-in together. We're going to rise or fall as one on this one. Please.
Are there any lawmakers who you've spoken with on Monday were no and now are yes?
I think we're moving people, but I don't want to get it. I don't know that I have I can't give you a precise answer, but we're making progress, and that gives me some optimism. Please, Mike.
You share Senate President Sweeney's assessment that if this doesn't happen Monday, it's not happening until after the election.
I don't know that I heard the Senate President say that, so I won't react to that as much as I'll say it's now or never, as Elvis Presley used to say, Monday. Sorry, if you didn't have your hand up, sorry, please. Yeah. I don't even want to entertain that. It's Monday or never, in my opinion. Please.
Again, not to name names, but what would you say to the lawmakers of color who consider this also a racial issue that say that it'll be more trouble than it's worth for the state, that it'll cause the state, exponentially more money to deal with the people of color, the communities of color who then want to go on welfare benefits and want to collect unemployment when they're fired from the jobs for legally smoking marijuana?
Yeah, so I would say I have nothing but respect for the people I've spoken with. I can't remember a bad conversation I've had in the sense of a food fight discussion about this. So I have enormous respect for folks, obviously the ones who are with us, but also for the ones who have their own arguments. And it's not surprisingly in some cases a generational thing. I mentioned this myself. This is not an easy one for me to get to. At the ripe age of 61 with still a couple of kids in high school. So this is not, but having said that, I just flat out disagree with them. I flat out disagree. The status quo is the alternative. Our kids are exposed. The bad guys are running the business, and all kidding aside about the gateway, part of the gateway issue is the guy in the corner opens his coat up and it isn't just marijuana. It's a whole host of stuff. We're going to put that guy out of business. We're going to put that guy out of business. It's the social injustices, both for the past convictions as well as for the folks who are either doing time or on parole. That's status quo. The ACLU, I think the number was $140 million adjudicating marijuana offenses in this state. I just don't see it the same way, and I suspect that view is shared by the folks up here with me today. A couple more, please.
Hi. Point to Reverend Boyer's point. You spoke to speak about any possible carve-outs. As Reverend Boyer talked about, corporate cannabis is foaming at the mouth. They're circling the wagons. The proximity to two big markets in New York City and Philadelphia that do not have this. We both know they're going to come over the border.
Yep.
Are there something set aside so
Black
people can have
Yep.
the licensing?
You bet.
Some set-asides and carve-outs.
Yep, so we can't do set-asides constitutionally because we have to complete a disparity study, and I'm happy to say at long last we're doing that. Hester Agadosi is leading it and doing an extraordinary job. So in the absence of set-aside, we have very robust goals in this bill. 15% for minority-owned, 15% for either women or disabled veteran-owned. There are impact zones, which are overwhelmingly communities of color up and down the state, which will have priority. There are opportunities for conditional licenses, so you don't have the full-bore capital or the full-bore track record. So there's basically smaller entities, which will more reflect the diversity of our state. It's pretty aggressive. And in fact, it's not just pretty aggressive. No state that's done this has come close to that. Bill, you agree with me, right? And by the way, let me say one other thing I wanted to say up front. If you're wondering why it's taken so long and why this is so hard, Reed and I were just talking about this. Only one state in the history of America has done this through legislation. One, Vermont. I love Vermont, but we're a lot more diverse. We're a lot bigger. This is a big lift. Every other state, folks have said, you know what, I don't want to, in the elected bodies, and you can understand why, legalization is overwhelmingly supported by the public. So it's an easy one to say, you know what, I don't want to take this vote. Let's let the public decide by referendum. So of the other 9 states in the District of Columbia, it was all done by referendum. We're trying to do this the hard way, I believe the courageous way, and ultimately, given the bill that we've got, the right way. One or two more, please.
What do you say to people who say you have to become more transactional, like Lincoln during the 13th Amendment, really push this through?
I would say the same thing to the people who claim that I don't get on the phone or meet or speak with people. They actually don't know who I am. Please. I would just say this. We are making progress, period. I don't want to get into the details. I'm cautiously I wouldn't even say that. I'm an optimist by nature. We are not there yet, though. Let me just say this. We are not there yet. We have to move a number of chess pieces still in both the Assembly and the Senate, and it's going to take all of us collectively to do that. I want to thank, from the bottom of my heart, this is an all-star lineup that you couldn't, in your wildest dreams, anticipate would get together, and they have come together. Their support is extraordinary. I want to thank Annette and Joe, the Speaker, to the other leaders in the Assembly. Richard, thank you for reading Steve's remarks, the Senate President, the leadership in the Senate, to all of the groups represented up here, including communities of faith, activists, business interests, mayors. It's an extraordinary group. And to all of you out there who are wondering, where should I be on this? Let me just say this. We have a chance, one chance, to protect our kids. We have one chance to drive the bad guys out of this business. We have one chance to regulate it ourselves with the right leadership. We have one chance to undo extraordinary social injustices that have built up over decades in a way that no state, whether it's associated with legalization of adult use marijuana or no state period in the history of our republic, has ever done. The day is Monday. The time is now. We must achieve success. Thank you all.